Welcome to the Falcons Fanatic Podcast, your dirty birds every weekend. All right, and welcome back to the final Falcons Fanatic Podcast of this season, of the 2023-2024 season. I'm your host as always, Lucky Roberts, and before I get into what was a pretty disappointing game and an overall pretty disappointing season for the Falcons, I just wanted to say, how much I enjoy doing this, and I want to thank you all for listening and being a part of this with me, this journey, even though, it never really turned out the way we wanted, as it never does. I just wanted to say it's, been an honor, and I'm excited about next year, and hopefully, we'll have some better luck. But I really do appreciate everything, and thank you so much for listening and joining along. Anyway, it's here to talk about Week 18, the Falcons versus the Saints. This one was in New Orleans. 48-17 is the final score today. The Saints absolutely dominated the Falcons, basically from the get-go. You will say, Atlanta scored two pretty quick touchdowns, and so maybe that doesn't qualify as the get-go, but, the Falcons really showed their best early, and it was a couple of lucky plays, just wide-open, blown coverages. One of them was thrown to Bijan Robinson. He had the longest catch of, I think, his career, 71 yards, and one to Scotty Miller, who was our second leading receiver today with 66 yards on his 56-yard catch where he was just found wide open, and that was leading us to a touchdown by Jonnu Smith in the end zone there. And outside of those two plays and a field goal, the Atlanta Falcons basically were putrid on offense, and the strong, defiant defense that we've grown to know and love over the last whole year now, it didn't do us any favors. And, you look back and you think, oh man, if we had that game, if we had this game, it could have been different. But I think this team, it's been broken from the start, and it's been broken for a couple of years. And you can't fix broken. If it's broken everywhere, where are you going to fix it from? So it's really, as expected, even though we had promise and we have different things, this team just wasn't ready. And it's always disappointing when you think a team's ready and it isn't. And this defense just pissed like a puppy and stayed on the porch, as Jamal Williams would say. And we lost to a Saints team that isn't much better than the Falcons, but they've found their way. And, they win this game, improved to 9-8. They did not make the playoffs, even though they do finish the season at 9-8, the same record as the Packers. They, just didn't shake out for them, even though they dominated the Falcons today, did everything they could. And a team that is moving on to the playoffs at 9-8. That's not the Packers. The one other one in the NFC is the Buccaneers, the champions for the third time in a row of this NFC South that really doesn't really deserve a winner. And it was shown today when they only beat the Panthers by 9 points. It kicked 3 field goals all day, and you're watching it from the Atlanta Falcons perspective, and it's up there in that top corner. You're eyeing it the whole time, especially when the Falcons are tied at 17 at halftime, or when they're winning by a touchdown early on, and you see, the Panthers have the ball. It's 0-0. What can happen? And throughout this whole game, you're thinking the exact same thing. It's only 6-0. Something can happen here. It's only 9-0. The Panthers gave the Falcons nothing today, and it was, this whole game was meaningless in the grand scheme of things, but a Saints-Falcons matchup is never going to be meaningless. And I'm sure that's something that Arthur Blank is going to be thinking about when he's mulling over the job security of Arthur Smith. And I don't think it's going to be something he's going to be able to survive from. Another 7-10 season, and it's not only the fact that They fell behind expectations that it's another 7-10 season, disappointing year. It's the first real disappointing year. But we haven't had any, exciting years either. So it's not really like he had any leeway. But really, the nail in Arthur Smith's coffin is, firstly, his inability to address the quarterback position. But secondly, most importantly, he's lost this dressing room and he's lost the fan base. And he's not going to be able to turn it around. And he's going to be out the door because of it. I think Arthur Blank takes the fan base into consideration a lot. And this fan base they're calling for his head, and I think he's going to deliver. And it's, I'm not going to say it's unfortunate because it was an unfortunate season, and that's you can't be handed everything in football. You got to earn it, and it wasn't earned. And that's just how the cookie crumbles sometimes. And the Falcons pretty much showed their true cards today. Sure, they got lucky 2 times on big plays, got some points out of it. But at the end of the day, 0 points in the third, 0 points in the fourth quarter. The Saints, 14 in the third, 17 in the fourth. They had nothing. I don't think anybody on the defensive end had a good game today. I thought Calais Campbell, he got a sack. He was, I guess, the one you'd pick out of the bunch if you were to pick one out of the bunch. But this bunch was not anything special. Only 3 sacks generated. It wasn't particularly a good game from A.J. Terrell, who got cooked. He got cooked pretty multiple times, but it was a touchdown. Shaheed A.T. Perry had 2 touchdowns, and it was just on his head every single time. And, he's tripping. I'm going to give him the benefit of the doubt because he does have that leeway of performing in the Falcons uniform, but he just really did not show up in a way that you would want him to. And another player who didn't really show up in a way you would want him to is Jesse Bates. And once again, he has leeway. But it's a game you got to have, and he's the stalwart of this defense, and we didn't see nothing from him today. And it's unfortunate, especially because of how good he was in the last Saints game this season, where the Falcons stole it from under the Saints' noses. And this defense, all up and down, just did not perform at any level. And sure, Arthur Smith is going to be mad about the late touchdowns that the Saints continue to run up the score. But there's a rivalry, baby. Show some heart, man. Jesus. This team showed nothing. No heart. The one player you always expect to show some heart, Cordero Patterson, he's been beaten to a pulp by not getting anything. Usually when you're beaten to a pulp, it's because you're getting too many carries. He's not getting enough. And he's the one who's lost the locker room, and he is the locker room. And it really showed. This team had no heart. And Arthur Smith is talking about it all the time, but look at your team, man. This is the NFL football. This is rivalry week. Show some freaking respect for the other team. They're going to try to win. They're going to try to run up the score. You do your bit. All right? Please, man. Who cares if they run up the score? I don't, it's like meaningless. None of this matters. Show some heart, at least. Show that you care. Clark Phillips also getting beaten to a pulp today. He had one good play, I would say. But just this defense up and down. David Onyemata back in the fold. He wasn't anything special. Ebiketie been silent after a breakout 4 weeks. I could continue. Like, seriously. It's disappointing, just as, everything is. And it was another, after last week's embarrassing offensive performance, it's even worse this week, because if you take away the 56-yard catch and the 71-yard catch, Desmond Ritter's receiving numbers are looking a lot more like he has 150 throwing yards. And sure, completion percentage was good, but he didn't really do anything. He had the 2 off of 2 lucky plays, And outside of that, Drake London, 4 for 41. Jonnu Smith, 2 for 29. Kyle Pitts, 2 for 27. Michael Pruitt, 1 for 17. It's spread around, but there's nothing here. It's fool's gold. And the Saints, it's the exact opposite. Rashid Shaheed, 65, 3 for 65. Chris Olave, 3 for 56. A.T. Perry, 3 for 53. Jawan Johnson, 3 for 40. And Kendre Miller, 73 yards rushing. Bijan Robinson had 11 carries, 28 yards. We're supposed to be... How are we screwing that up? How can we not run the damn football? Did you watch last year? That was entertaining football to say this. This is not entertaining football. This is just sad. Straight up sad. I couldn't take it. I was at a friend's house and he had the Lions game on. I'm huddled around my phone watching the Falcons. For some reason, still believing in hope and believing in something. I had visions of the Falcons somehow making the playoffs, and obviously it never came true, but it's never not going to be there, the visions. And you're looking at your phone, and you're huddled around it, and you're believing in something, and it just doesn't believe in you back. It's just not fun, and I just don't want to look at it anymore. It's a well-deserved break, I guess, is what I'm trying to say, but I know in a couple weeks I'm going to be begging for it back. It's just, I just can't do it. It's, really taken quite a bit out of me, and I'm ready for new. I'm ready for new, I'm ready for young, I'm ready for something different. Because this ain't it. Defensively, give him benefit of the doubt. Offensively, this ain't it. Coaching, this ain't it. Defensively, we need some young blood in here. The Saints, to their credit, which is a sentence I never think I would ever say, played some pretty good defense today. Demario Davis, one of the best players on their defense, was great. Tyrann Mathieu from the grave had a decent game. And they did it while only having one sack. Nathan Shepard, their secondary, clamped down on our offense, our passing offense. Everything was short, underneath the sticks, and our rushing game was inept from the beginning. Nothing you could fix. They sold out and they stopped everything. And, Pete Werner, Carl Granderson had a good game. He had a TFL. Nathan Shepard, I think I may have mentioned him already, who had the sack. Yeah, he had a good game as well. They deserved it, to be honest. And something I wanted to do in this episode was to just go over the entire season and sort of encapsulate my feelings about what has gone on, because, sure, I'll be back, but I don't know if I'll ever get a chance where it's this fresh on my mind. So, we started out 2-0 and all over everywhere. And by everywhere, I mean Twitter. You're hearing excitement and joy. And even before the season, you're hearing how excited people were in Atlanta about the Falcons. Arthur Blank mentioning it in the media and really getting it's year 3 of a 3-year rebuild. It's 3-year plans. We're really getting into it. And you start out with a big win against Carolina. Sure, it wasn't the best performance that you could have seen, but it was a great game by Jesse Bates, and it was a coming out party. Starting out on strong feet, 1-0. We play Green Bay at home as well next week, and it all falters instantly. And you were thinking, man, we need to beat Carolina bigger than that if we want to have a good shot at it. And Green Bay starts, knocking some teeth out. But the Falcons find something. They grit their teeth and they punch back. And it was a huge comeback win. Really great down the stretch play by Desmond Ritter walking them down, kicking the field goal. And, kicking Atlanta to a 2-0 record from a 1-point win, 13-point comeback. It was really something to behold, and just the way the crowd was buzzing around the Mercedes-Benz Stadium, it made you happy inside. And we followed that up with 2 losses where the Falcons' offense was inept. We were 2-2, but looking back, those were the 2 best teams we played all year. Detroit and Jacksonville. Detroit, is the certified contender. We played them in Detroit. We lost 20-6, and it was disappointing, but there's going to be games like that. And then we played Jacksonville all the way over in London, and it was a similar story. And I'm seeing this now, and I'll get to it later, but the Falcons have fired Arthur Smith. I'll get into it in a bit. Anyway, we next week play Houston, and it's more of the same. Very, very similar to that Packers game. Falcons sure stay in it a little bit in the first and second quarter maybe. Houston pours it on, and the Falcons need a huge fourth quarter comeback led by Desmond Ridder to win it. And Texans also made the playoffs. Probably the 3rd best team we played all year. And to get a win against them, you're thinking, okay, we beat Green Bay, they made the playoffs. We beat Houston, they made the playoffs. We're 2-2 against playoff teams currently. And Carolina, obviously, you're going to beat them, right? And then the next week is when the horror starts. We play Washington. And you don't think the Falcons played too poorly. You look at the stats, Falcons 402 total yards, Washington 200. We more than doubled their entire game. We score 16 points, so many points left on the table. And despite all that, Falcons come up short. We're now 3-3. Commanders, not a good team. Really need that one. We go and play Tampa Bay. Tampa Bay did make the playoffs. I wouldn't call them a good team. And, the Falcons once again outgained their opponents. But they just kept tripping in their own way, and it took a Younghoe Koo field goal game winner to move the Falcons to 4-3. But it's another good win. Okay, this is when it really falls off the rails. Tennessee, 28-23. Tennessee scored a touchdown a quarter. Atlanta tried to pour it on at the end. Was not enough. But you look here and, you tell yourself that's going to happen. Tennessee, though, once again, not a good team. You would like your defense to step up a bit more. You'd like your offense to step up a bit earlier. Falcons move to 4-4. Then they play the Vikings. The Vikings finishing in a similar spot to the Falcons overall in the year. This is another game. You look at it. Falcons entirely dominated. And they couldn't handle it. They couldn't do it. Falcons with the lead there in the 4th. They let Josh Dobbs walk it all the way down, score a touchdown, and the Falcons lose 31-28. And this is when you sort of realize, that game for me at least, was when I realized this is no different than any other season. And you compound that into the next week against the Cardinals, the 2-8 Cardinals. At the time, they were 1-8. They win, move to 2-8. They lose 25-23. The Falcons only put up 23 points, and they get absolutely dominated by just Kyler Murray's resurgent. Didn't score a touchdown, had 249 yards. Taylor Heineke had 55, Desmond Ridder 39, 70 total passing yards. Bijan had a decent game. How are you only scoring that much? I don't even know how, with that many yards, we put up 23 points, let alone stuck in it. But, letting an Arizona team with a new quarterback, same as a new quarterback from Minnesota, recipe for disaster. And 3 losses on the bounce. You're looking at the Falcons being 2-6 in their last 8, and you're like, we need to fix something here. And they play New Orleans. They steal one from New Orleans. New Orleans deserved to win. The Falcons win 24-15, and it was all behind a great performance. The second real dominant performance, that made Jesse Bates the Pro Bowler that he is. And they steal one from the Saints. Huge for divisional. Absolutely huge. Then they go to New York. Disappointing offense, but the New York Jets have an even more disappointing offense. And the Falcons sneak out 13-8 winners. And all of a sudden, 2 wins on the bounce. Falcons back at 6-6. You're feeling good about yourself again. Tampa Bay. Atlanta loses. A tough one. Come up a couple yards short with Drake London. If we have that win, maybe stuff flip. Okay, next week, Carolina. Falcons lose 9-7. Offense is putrid. This is when the pain really set in. We lose 9-7, and that's really what lost us the year, really. And these last... So we play Carolina, and it's the worst game of our season. They kick 3 field goals. They win it. Sure, it's a rainy day. Falcons score 7 early. Not again for the rest of the game. And they lose to Carolina on a field goal kick with nobody in the stadium. Just a real disappointer, and I don't want to talk about it. We follow up our worst game of the season with our best game of the season against Indianapolis. 29-10 is the score. Falcons dominate in every single fashion. First time you can say this in a while on Christmas. It's a miracle. Chicago next week, and you think, well, if we win these next 2 games, we can find ourselves in the playoffs, and we would have if we won those next 2 games. We play Chicago, and our defense folds. 37 points. Chicago, Justin Fields, picking us apart. We still have a chance against New Orleans, like this week. 48 points. Defense falls apart. Locker room lost. And Arthur Smith is gone from Atlanta, as he should be. A new head coach is incoming. The entire Arthur Smith tenure, he's been 7-10. He's been below average in every single way you can be. And that's just about the worst spot you can be in football. His inept coaching, stemming from the fact we didn't have a QB coach all year, his inept coaching and play calling that's, as basic as probably his palate. We're supposed to be a tough-nosed, rugged, run the football team, and we're not. And we can't throw the football because of the players we have in our positions. And just our play calling is so stale. We run the same run plays. Doesn't work because they figured it out. We run the same pass plays. Doesn't work because the running doesn't work. And he deserves to be gone. And hopefully we can bring in somebody who actually knows how to run an offense more than zone runs. That would be a delight to see. Because it was in our palm this season, and it was in his palm. And they really, I don't see this season going worse than 7-10. And it's just, that's how it is to be a Falcons fan, I guess. You get the worst. But that's, how it's going to be. Hopefully next season we get to have some fun at least while we're doing it. Next, I'm going to be talking about the other scores around the league, the playoff teams, and then that's going to be it. I'm going to wrap it up for the season. So I'll see you in a sec. All right, and I am back for the final time to talk to you guys about the games around the league. So the first one I'm going to be talking about is the Steelers versus the Ravens. A matchup that did, if the Steelers win, they had an outside chance of making it into the playoffs. And this one was obviously on Saturday, and they do win 17-10 over the Ravens. It was a Deontay Johnson difference maker, 71-yard touchdown reception where it was sort of just the safety sneaking in a little too much. It was a great throw by Rudolph, and that was the difference in this game. 17-10, low-scoring game. Both defenses played out of their minds as T.J. Watt does go down, unfortunately. But it was a great game, and the Steelers kept their, season alive with a nice win there. Texans beat the Colts in what was a very, very good, entertaining game. The Colts, 4th and 2. It was dropped by the Colts player. Can't say it off the top of my head. But the Texans hold on. They deserve to win it. C.J. Stroud, first time in the playoffs in his first season. It was really great. Their whole season watching them play. They finished 10-7 and in that wild card spot in the AFC South. Now to talk about today's games. The Browns versus the Bengals first. Bengals win, and now every single team in that AFC North is now above 500. Something that very rarely happens. Did happen as the Bengals torched the Browns 31-14. They still find themselves outside of the playoff picture. The next game on the docket is the Lions versus Vikings. Lions, this is one that I was watching on the TV as I was huddled watching the Falcons game on my phone. The Lions beat the Vikings 30-20 as they cement themselves even further with their record-breaking season as their first time winning the NFC North. They win this game, moving themselves to 12-5, Vikings 7-10. As I was talking to you, very similar season to the Falcons. Underperforming, they couldn't put it together today, and that's why they are where they are. I think they have the 9th pick in the draft this season, so disappointing year for them. The Lions, the exact opposite, and they're gonna, be continuing playing football for at least a couple more weeks, well, at least one more. Jaguars, Titans. The Jaguars lose against the Titans, losing their spot in the playoffs as it happens, and they lost 28-20. It was a very, very closely contested game. Trevor Lawrence, 4th down. Jaguars couldn't get it, and the Titans get one over on their division rivals, the Jaguars. And they actually, as that happens, the Saturday game, Houston wins the division because of it, and it also moves the Steelers into the playoffs. So yet another thing the Steelers can boast about, their never-ending positive seasons, and of course under Tomlin, but as well making the playoffs for however many seasons they continue to do it for. The Jets beat the Patriots. Patriots basically selling everything they can. Breece Hall had a touchdown. Everything else basically field goals. Not the most entertaining football game out there. Patriots kick a field goal. They're going to be shopping for a new quarterback, as the Falcons will be. I've talked about this other game a little bit at length. Buccaneers versus Panthers. 9-0 is the score. 3 field goals is all the difference, and they clinched the NFC South in another very, very poor game. Not very entertaining. Panthers hoping to look for something different as Falcons fans. And a Falcon fan myself, I'm hoping for the same, more of the same. Packers beat the Bears, just shows how easy it is to actually beat the Bears. The Packers win 17-9, move into 7th spot in the NFC playoff picture, and Justin Fields not as good as last week. Packers win. Jordan Love and the Packers are now in the playoffs once again. Raiders beat the Broncos. Now they're both 8-9. They win 27-14. Both teams would have expected more, but if you told them 8-9 was their season, you probably would have said that makes a lot of sense. And they beat up on each other. They both finished 8-9 on the season. And they're going to continue to beat up on each other for years to come. More games coming thick and fast. Giants play the Eagles. 27-10 is your score. The Giants beat the Eagles. The Eagles are now 11-6. Really just have fallen from their precipice that they were standing upon when they clinched the playoffs so far long ago. They lose to the Giants. Real disappointing stuff. They've fallen down the rankings, and as a Falcons fan, as I continue to say, I'm going to be cheering for my boy Julio Jones to finally get that ring on his finger that he's so needed throughout his career that we just could never give him. And hopefully it's the Eagles' year, and I'm going to be rooting for the Eagles, bandwagoning, because he deserves it. And honestly, after last season, they sort of deserve it too. Seahawks versus the Cardinals. Cardinals provide yet another scare but the Seahawks do prevail and win. They did not, however, find themselves in the playoffs, as that last playoff spot was taken by the Packers. But it was just a successful sort of season by the Seahawks, but it wasn't successful enough, as this game wasn't successful enough, as they only win 21-20 over the putrid Cardinals. So, final 4 games for you here. Chiefs versus Chargers. Chiefs win 13-12. Chiefs not really looking at their same dominant selves as the Chargers, looking really not like the dominant selves. They've had a really bad season with just a bunch of, coaching miscues and quarterback issues, defense issues. That wasn't the issue today. They just got out kicked, basically, by Harrison Butker. The Rams versus 49ers. Rams win against the 49ers. They clinched themselves a playoff spot out of nowhere. Predicted to be one of the worst teams in the league this season, and they beat one of the projected best teams in the league today to clinch their playoff spot, 21-20 against the 49ers, and they find themselves playing some January football. Cowboys versus Commanders. Very expected 38-10 win for the Cowboys. We'll have to see now if they can show it when it matters. And finally, the last game here I'm talking to you about is the Bills versus the Dolphins. Bills win. They move themselves into the playoffs. They beat the Dolphins in a, lots of touchdowns, not many kicks. Score that's happened about 1 million times from scoregami standards. And a needed win for sure for the Bills, who actually find themselves second in the AFC. So that's going to do it for the game recap section. And this episode is getting a bit long, I do know, but I'm just going to quickly recap all the playoff spots, and then you guys will be on your way for the season. All right, in the NFC, the 49ers, who did lose today against the Rams, do find themselves first in the NFC and do get that coveted bye week. They finished 12-5. And, you'll see here a bunch of 12-5 teams. The Cowboys rounding up in second. They're going to be playing the Rams, who just beat the 49ers, looking like a pretty strong team. Cowboys might falter once again in that first couple rounds. 49ers getting that bye. Lions now finished third. They're also 12-5. They are going to be playing the Rams. Cowboys playing the Packers. My apologies. Packers sneaking their way in. Cowboys, I think, will be favored in that one. But once again, whoever knows with these Cowboys. Lions playing now the Rams. That's going to be a great, interesting matchup with the young Rams talent facing up against the young Lions talent. Lions proven a bit more as they're 12-5 on the year, but come playoff time, it's any given Sunday, right? And finally, the last game in the NFC: Buccaneers versus Eagles. Buccaneers going to be in Tampa Bay. The Eagles, the much more accomplished team, but as of late, not being the most accomplished team. This is going to be an interesting matchup to see who comes out on top of a team that doesn't really deserve to be there and a team that of recent doesn't really deserve to be there. So who knows what's going to happen there. Moving on to the AFC, the Ravens. After a dominant week after dominant week, huge wins after huge wins. They do lose this week against Pittsburgh, but they weren't playing Lamar Jackson, who has been the MVP for this season. They finished first in the AFC and do get that bye week, and they will not be playing for 2 weeks now. Going to get lots of prep done. Bills in second in that AFC, as I was talking to you earlier about after that win over Miami. They find themselves winning the AFC East, which was a tight battle this year between them and Miami, who are in sixth. The Bills are playing the Steelers, who just had a win and got in through a lot of luck going their way, but it always seems to go their way. They finished seventh and will be playing the Bills. The Chiefs, who have scraped their way, every 9-year-old's going to be saying, I picked them to win the Super Bowl, but if they haven't seen the football, they're going to be losing their money because the Chiefs have not really looked at themselves. They're going to be playing the Dolphins in Kansas City, but the Dolphins, I think, do have the capability to knock the Chiefs off here in the first week of the playoffs in the wild card round. I do think that is a very high possibility, as they're both with the same record and the Dolphins have seemed much more lively as of this season. And finally, what's going to be just a nice, gritty football game here. Texans, Browns, CJ Stroud versus the Browns quarterback, just resurgent of Joe Flacco. And it's going to be interesting. The Browns' strong defense, the Texans' strong offense, strength against strength, clash between these two teams. Anybody can take it. It's going to be in Houston. It's going to be a nice one to watch. My predictions in the NFC, I will say the team that I pick is going to be the team that I want to win, and I'm going to be picking the Eagles. Just somehow they figure something out. My real pick would probably be along the lines of 49ers or Lions. One of those two teams probably making it into the Super Bowl. In the AFC, just watching the Ravens over the past couple weeks now, I think they're the team to beat, and they have been unstoppable with Lamar Jackson, and so they would be my pick in the AFC. And so that's going to do it for me, the Falcons Fanatic podcast for this year, this extra special long episode for you all. Thanks for listening, as always. As I said at the beginning of this episode, it's really appreciated you all being here with me, and I thank you so much. And, stick with me for the continuing of my journey, because it is going to be something you will want to watch. So thank you, and follow me on Twitter, do whatever you want to do. Signing out for the last time this year, it's Lucky Roberts with the Falcons Fanatic podcast.